Sunt Bogdan Alecu și bine ați venit la o nouă emisiune CEC Bank pentru afaceri românești. Discutăm astăzi și despre politică internațională și cum putem atrage mai multe investiții către România, inclusiv din partea de defense. Îl avem alături de noi pe Robert de Groot, Vicepreședintele Băncii Europene pentru Investiții. Iar în partea a doua emisiunii discutăm tot despre investiții, despre cum atragem către România și în special către Reșița. O avem alături de noi pe Oana Borza, administrator al ADLR, compania locală de investiții. Revenim însă la invitatul nostru. Hello, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
You're now in Bucharest. It's the 8th of October. Why did you come to Bucharest these days?
Well, I'm on a tour of European capitals from the perspective of the European Investment Bank, which has been asked to do more in the area of security and defense. And we decided that, especially in the short term, it would be very good to give priority to the member states on the eastern flank of the EU, which deserve some additional and urgent attention because of the situation around the EU. So this brings me to Bucharest.
What opportunities does Romania have when it comes to defense and attracting investments in defense?
Well, the European Investment Bank has been asked by the European leaders over the past year to really up our game in the area of security and defense. We are an investment bank. We started in 1958. We are owned by the ministers of finance of all 27 member states, and we used to really do projects in the area of cohesion and infrastructure and increasingly energy. But now, because of the situation in Europe, we have to turn our attention also to the field of security and defense. So over the past year, we've been changing the way we work. We have set up a separate office with people who know about security and defense. And now we are approaching the different capitals and member states to discuss with ministers of defense and ministers of finance, but also with others in society, what projects we could finance as the bank of the European member states.
Does this have a connection with the SAFE program?
Well, the SAFE program is from the European Commission, and it's geared towards giving loans to member states to really acquire capabilities in the area of security and defense. We are separate from the European institutions. Of course, we work closely together with them, but we are more of an investment bank. So if I may give you some examples, we are interested to invest into projects which have to do with infrastructure. We have to make sure that our roads and rail and bridges, which we all have inside the EU, are capable to transport heavy military material. And we have neglected that over the past couple of decades. So in many member states, we have to have a new look at this infrastructure. So this is one example. A second example, we have invested in 1 or 2 ports already, which are renovating their port facilities, also to allow for military-sized vessels to be able to offload. So these are some infrastructure examples we are working on, but there are many more.
Who can access your finance in Romania? Private companies, state-owned companies, the government?
All of them. Okay. So I think that we are open for business both with governments, both with government entities or state entities, with the corporate sector. We usually do projects from a certain minimum size onwards, where we finance a maximum of 50%. So 50% of the financing has to come from either commercial banks or the company itself or the state. But we can finance across the board. To give you an example, we have signed a loan agreement with a big European company to do research and development in the area of radar technology. also relevant for the security of our citizens. So we can do the private companies, we can do ports, which is state, sometimes state-owned entities, or at least related to the state. And we even have developed a instrument to allow small and medium-sized enterprises working in the field of security and defense to get better access to finance, because they often find difficulties to get credit from banks throughout Europe. So we are too small to be able to directly approach small and medium-sized enterprises. So what we do, we go through a commercial bank. So we give a loan to a commercial bank to pass on at the very interesting rates we have to offer to small and medium-sized enterprises. And we hope to be able to do more of these loans in the near future.
Do you have a bank, a partner bank in Romania?
Well, we have many partner banks in Romania in the field of security and defense. We are exploring what we could be doing together with commercial banks. So that's work in progress.
In Romania, we have a certain problem with the interest rate. It's pretty high. What interest do you offer?
Well, we are a AAA bank. So that means we can do our funding at very competitive rates on the market. So we can pass on this very interesting rate to whoever borrows from us. So I think in most member states we can offer very attractive interest rates.
That's a good news for us, because we also need some big investments when it comes to defense in infrastructure.
Well, it's quite clear that all of us in Europe have to do a little bit more, and that's also the decision at the NATO summit taken in The Hague in the Netherlands in June last year, to go up to 3.5%, and then 1.5% also in infrastructural and other investments which are needed. When I look at the European Investment Bank, we are already going to be at 3.5% in 2025. In 2023, we were only at 0.5% when it comes to investments in the area of security and defense. So it shows how demand is picking up, and we have a solid pipeline of very good prospective projects we are now looking into.
And in Romania, we have also an agreement to increase our spending towards the 5% threshold. And we need to attract more investments in this area and to buy more equipment. Do you have certain projects in mind for Romania?
Well, we are demand-driven, so we don't go to a capital. I don't go to capitals in Europe to tell governments
what to do.
No, it works the other way around. We are here to offer our support, to explain the options we have. Governments decide on what they would like to invest in, if they would like to go through the SAFE program of the European Commission, or maybe turn to the EIB or finance it in a different way. So today I've had a very good discussion with the Romanian authorities, more in explaining what we could do, what the examples are we can see coming to our offices in other member states, and just to exchange information on what the options are. And I'm sure the new government at some point in time will come back to us once they have decided on their priorities.
Do you have a signed agreement with any of the countries in the region?
Well, we have signed agreements on specific projects, also with countries in the regions. We have quite a few in Poland, for example. I mentioned the ports in Esbjerg, Denmark, Göteborg, in Sweden, also in Italy. We have signed some big contracts in Spain, in France, in Germany, also in the Benelux. So we are slowly expanding our portfolio of projects. So I really do hope we can come to some wonderful projects which are in the interest of all Romanians.
Mm-hmm. Could you be more specific about these projects? What exactly were they investing in infrastructure in ports or special equipments?
Well, I think if you look at the words security and defense, the scope is quite broad. So let's start with the security field. Today, unfortunately, because of the situation also on your borders, you have to think of protecting your critical infrastructure,
Yes.
which is your energy supply, your water supply, your civilian hospitals. We can see how the Russian regime is targeting civilian infrastructure in Ukraine. So I think everywhere in Europe we have to look into protecting our critical infrastructure. Look what happens in the Baltic Sea with cables which are accidentally or not accidentally broken in the sea. So the whole concept of security, including cybersecurity, we have to revisit. And you know, we get quite a number of interest from projects in that sphere. Then we come to the area of defense, where there are also increasing number of projects ministries of defense have to think of. For example, in Lithuania, we are financing the building of a very big military base, which is going to be built to house 5,000 German soldiers. So this is also an example. In another member state in the east of the European Union, we have financed the 2 satellites, which are going to be used to look what is happening on the ground, also on the border with their eastern neighbors. There's talk. We had a European leaders meeting in Copenhagen last week. They're now talking also about anti-drone measures we have to take all over Europe when it comes to incoming drones of unknown origin, and I think Romania also has had this experience. So these projects first have to materialize, and then when we are approached, we are happy to look into them.
And now we also have at the European level the new program regarding the defense against drones.
Yes, this is something which is being worked on. So we are bankers. We don't, we don't construct a defense against drones. We don't have the knowledge. We could look into financing projects related to that. So first we need decisions by others, which is the ministries of defense and the governments of the member states, together with the Commission. And we've seen the examples and the initiatives which are being worked on. And then I think we are in the second row when it comes to, once they have decided how, where, and when, to see if we can support those projects with finance.
Do you have a certain budget in mind when it comes to financing defense in this part of Europe?
Well, for this year, 2025, 3.5% of our budget will go into security and defense. And our budget is set by the member states, all 27 of them. So they will tell us what they want us to do in the area of security defense. So we're already at 3.5%, which is very close to the decisions of The Hague. I would not be surprised if we will be asked to go a bit higher next year.
And we were discussing about big investments, but do you also work with SMEs, for example, small and medium enterprises?
Yes, we do, not directly, because we are too small a bank. So we have to go through a commercial bank and give a loan. So, for example, we signed a big loan with Deutsche Bank, which works all over Europe, for 500 million euros. So they pass on the very interesting rates to SMEs working in the field of security and defense, because in many states, what I hear when I talk to industry and SME representatives and organizations is that they still find it difficult at the local level to attract the working capital, the credit they need. And let's not forget, it's the SMEs, the small and medium-sized enterprises, which really have to do most of the work when it comes to the supply chain of the big European producers. So if you're a big European producer and you want to double your production, you cannot just double it. You need your whole supply chain, including the small and medium-sized enterprises, to do the same. And for that, most of them need credit. So I think we also cater for them.
And you were discussing earlier about the infrastructure to transport heavy machinery like tanks on bridges and railway. But do you mean also just to invest, for example, just in bridges, or can you finance bigger projects like certain portions of highway?
Well, we are already doing that. It is the bread and butter of the European Investment Bank. We do up to 15 billion a year in European infrastructure. So today we signed a loan on the A1 highway in Romania, and we've done other highways in the past. So these highways are used both by civilians and, in case of conflict, by the military. So if we are renovating a stretch of a railroad, the only thing we add on from the perspective of security and defense, which is done by the member state where the project is to make sure that if you renovate the bridge, let's renovate it in such a way that it can also carry heavy loads. So I think that is a very important element. And the European Investment Bank, we are not just a bank. We have a very big engineering department, and we can also offer technical assistance to member states to get these projects to be absolutely top of the bill when it comes to the challenges which are going to face us in this field.
Do you also have discussions with governments regarding deficit or interest rates? Because Romania now has a bigger deficit than we used to before 2020. And that's creating a problem when it comes to interest rates. Do you have certain criteria that you have the government to respect?
Well, we are a bank. We are owned by the 27 finance ministers. They want us to give a loan and get the loan paid back by the borrower, whether it's a corporate or a government or a state entity, with the interest rate which has been decided. So that's how we look at what we call in jargon the bankability of a problem. Can the loan be paid back? So when it comes to the sovereign, of course, that's a totally different issue. But we don't have an opinion on the fiscal situation in individual member states. That's not our job.
Do you have some certain numbers that you look at?
Well, we look, for example, if we give a loan to a big company, we look at, can the loan be paid back? Is there enough cash flow to be able to pay the yearly installments, including interest rate? So what we call the due diligence we do is not only on banking terms, but also on all the rules and regulations which are there in the European Union. So we look at this quite seriously and quite intensely. And I think once we feel that the project is good enough for us to also participate in, as we do only 50%, it also allows commercial banks to say, well, the EIB is quite positive about this project, maybe we should have a look at it too. So this is the way we try and judge the project. So it's both on the regulatory level when it comes to EU regulation, it's on the banking level, but also, is it a good project? Is this going to make European defense stronger? Is it going to be make Europe more autonomous when it comes to the production, for example, of material we need for our security and defense? Is it going to make our societies, our people, more resilient once we have to face problems from outside?
Can also get a loan foreign companies to invest in Romania? I'm asking, for example, a few weeks back, we had an event with the British Embassy. Many companies from the UK came to Bucharest to present what they do and how they can contribute to our defense. Can a company from the UK get finance from you to invest in Romania in a project?
Well, we finance projects inside the EU. which improve the defense capabilities of the EU. So that is, so whether the company might have an origin somewhere else, I don't think for us is the priority. But we try and do something which structurally and in the long term really makes our defense better. And we are a bank, so when it comes to defense, we do not always know exactly the details from what really makes our defense more autonomous, more strong. So for that reason, on real defense projects, we seek the advice of the European Defence Agency in Brussels. It's an agency also owned by the 27 member states and the 27 ministers of defense. And they advise us, is this project really relevant to have a more autonomous European defense? So this is how we judge the project proposals which come to our desk.
Mm-hmm. Usually bureaucracy slows down the process of an acquisition or an investment, and sometimes it's being seen as a vulnerability. Do you have some special mechanism to move things faster?
Well, we've promised the leaders in Europe and also our shareholders to really do our utmost when it comes to security and defense, because the situation is urgent, to speed up as much as possible the decision-making process inside our institution. And I'm proud to say that with the wonderful people we have inside the bank, we have really been able to bring this down to well below 1 year, in many cases even to 6 months. But it always takes time, especially with complex infrastructural projects. You also need engineers. You have to bring in technical advice. These are not things which move quickly, but I'm happy to say that we really were able to bring down what we call the time to market in the field of security and defense.
Every time I've asked you something, you said that it's being owned by the 27 ministers of finance or defense. But, for example, we have some countries in Europe, in the EU, that sometimes, I don't know, they seem a bit strange in how they address certain problems. Isn't this a vulnerability?
Well, we see the representatives of the ministers of finance every 5-6 weeks. And we, above a certain threshold, we present the project proposals also to them to get their agreement. I have seen, this to be a very professional meetings, and I have at least no doubt in my mind that this is all looked at in a very serious way. And I feel very much supported, especially in the field where I'm very active, which is security and defense, by all 27.
Okay, because in Europe now we have a situation in France. We had some elections in the Czech Republic, and since we have many problems in Europe, besides the ones regarding
when it
defense.
comes to projects for our infrastructure and for our citizens, I think all of us, whatever the government in any EU country, investments need to go on. That's why the bank has been there since 1958 already. So investments are always needed. And when it comes to the field of security and defense, I see activities in almost all member states.
That's good news. Did you have a certain message for our authorities, for the Romanian government, when you met with them?
Well, I was very happy with the invitations to come and explain what is the EIB doing, what can we offer, how does the system work, how does the procedures work. They asked some of the same questions you have asked me about the timing and how long does it take. So I think these were very constructive discussions. Maybe 1 or 2 options across the table. Well, that is for us to work on and to also wait for further decision making on the side of the Romanian government, and then see what their priorities will be, and then we will work on them as fast as possible.
Do you have a certain target, I don't know, for us, for Poland or other countries on the Eastern Front, regarding investments? How much should we invest? Because we have that target of 3.5%, but we don't always spend that money on defense.
Well, I think that's not up to a bank to comment on that. We are here to give financing options to projects in this field, and I think this is up to domestic politics in each of the member states, and to discussions both within NATO and within the Council of the European Union.
I understand. So you offer a service to them? Exactly.
That's what we are for. We are the bank of the member states, and we offer them a service.
You can't impose, you must spend this amount of money on defense.
I don't think that is what a bank should do.
Is this the most challenging period of your career, when you have to finance defense?
Well, I'm very much motivated when you look at the urgency of what we collectively have to do, what has been decided by our leaders on various occasions, whether it's the European Council or the NATO summit, from the perspective of all the colleagues within the bank and our headquarters in Luxembourg under the leadership of President Calvinu, to really put our money where our mouth is. So we've been asked to really up our game when it comes to financing in this field, and this is what we are doing, and I'm very happy that it looks like we are going to reach the 3.5% by the end of the year for 2025, so it shows that we are really making this operational.
Will you have enough money to invest also in other projects, civilian projects?
Absolutely, because you know, we are also the climate bank of the European Union, so 50% of what we do on a yearly basis goes in the area of sustainability, climate, and energy. So I think this is also of key importance, because we also need to look at our energy supply to be more autonomous and to be more resilient. And at the same time to our industry, to make sure they remain competitive. Mm-hmm. So you will see that these are activities which are far bigger, are extremely relevant, and sometimes they overlap. So there are some activities which at the same time generate revenue when it comes to the economy, but equally has a part of the project which also strengthens our resilience. So I see this as overlapping, and that makes it a lot easier.
But how do you make them get along when it comes to climate and reducing the CO2 footprint with military? Because military isn't very ecological.
It's very interesting. If you talk to generals with responsible positions in these challenging times across Europe, they all tell me that when it comes to their investments, they also have to save on energy consumption. So they also are interested. For example, if they want to build a new military hospital, let's, build it state-of-the-art, as sustainable as possible, as energy efficient as possible. So they're also interested in saving energy, so in case of crisis and need, they can use all the energy they need where it's needed on the front line. So I think from them I was pleasantly surprised by their interest in also especially in the field of energy, but sustainability in general, to try and get state-of-the-art investments. So I don't see a problem in the two, being a climate bank and also active in security and defense. I think this goes in parallel and this goes together.
Because everything is about efficiency.
Everything is about efficiency. So I think when we look at what we have to do collectively in Europe to make ourselves ready in case, let's hope it will not happen, of conflict, but also what we are collectively doing to support the government of the Ukraine, efficiency is a key word.
Talking about infrastructure, Also, to transport power, energy, can this be a project for you in Romania?
Absolutely. Out of the almost $100 billion euros we did last year, almost 30 billion euros was in the field of energy, whether it's renewables, the grid, power supply, wind farms at sea or on land. So energy is a very, very big component.
Because, like you said, in Ukraine, the Russians attacked the grid and the power plants.
Yes, so...
Those are very vulnerable.
Yes, so also we, and especially in the eastern flank of the European Union, we really have to think, if we are going to improve our grid and our network, let's make sure it is resilient in that sense. So we have to rethink, that's why I started off with, when it comes to our critical infrastructure, we have to really look at, is it safe enough in case of an emergency? And also we are learning from the situation in the Ukraine. We are very happy also to be able to support the Ukraine in their energy supply, both at the national level, but very much also at the local level.
Because they also have some projects to connect their grid to the European grid.
Yes, we are very happy that this has moved very quickly. So they are very well integrated into the European system.
Will you have some special projects also with the Republic of Moldova?
Well, we do have projects with Moldova, but more in the general infrastructure sense and also looking at SMEs. When it comes to areas of security and defense, what we are doing is inside the EU. And
you don't see any changes also to finance in the Republic of Moldova some investments in defense?
Well, at the moment, our focus is, this is what we've been asked to do, to really focus on inside the EU, with special attention for the member states on the eastern flank, so all the way from Finland in the north to Cyprus in the southeast. And also Romania is, of course, a very important one in this chain. And that's why I said we're also interested if there's going to be an anti-drone plan and maybe project and technology which collectively will be used. We're also happy to look into the options of financing that.
Mm-hmm. Are there new projects for 2025-2026 when it comes to financing in this part of Europe?
I think what's going to be very important is space, for several reasons. We need to be able to communicate autonomously as Europeans with each other. So we have the Galileo project, which is the European GPS. But when it comes to activities in space, bringing satellites into space, satellites we need for communication, for navigation. So I think this will require quite some investments. There are some projects, collective European flagship projects taking shape in this area. And this requires our own autonomous European ownership of these projects. So I see some of that coming in 25, 26. The drone option I already talked about. I think we have to do the military mobility axis across Europe. So this is mostly from harbors in the west of Europe to the east, but also infrastructure from the north to the south. I think we have to do a lot when it comes to new technologies and invest in startups and scale-ups, in innovation. Very small companies. Again, the European Investment Bank doesn't do this directly, but through our daughter, the European Investment Fund, we are able to invest in venture capital funds, which in turn invest in very small startup and scale-up companies. And I'm very happy the first handful of venture capital funds exclusively for the security and defense sector have started, and we are participating in them. So I think in many of these fields, research and development remains a very important one also to think of infrastructure, SMEs, manufacturing, because when it comes to manufacturing of crucial capabilities, I think we also need to make sure that they are, to a certain extent present in Europe.
But what about cybersecurity and data centers? Will you also, could you also finance this? Because we have seen in the last months many attacks, cyber attacks, on companies in Europe. Do companies also invest in cybersecurity, and can you finance these kinds of projects, and also to have security over data?
Absolutely. I think this also plays into being more autonomous as Europe. So we can certainly finance projects which, and we're already doing that, which have to do with cyber security. And data centers is also something we have done. And data centers are very important also when it comes as critical, because they are critical infrastructure to a certain extent, to make sure that they are safe.
And the data stays in Europe, not, I don't know, somewhere else on a server?
Well, of course, it would be very welcome if data we collectively collect from our satellites stays in Europe, and I'm sure that that happens.
I understand. Thank you for coming to our studio, and thank you for the interview.
You're very welcome.
Mulțumesc foarte mult că ne-ați urmărit. Noi luăm o scurtă pauză și revenim imediat.